uh, delivered what they call the city route. That was Moore Avenue and Nash Street. And there were ice patrons in quite a number of the places on Moore Avenue because there was no refrigeration. And only one building on our route that we serviced was the Palace Cafe down just this side of 34, and it was air conditioned.
Do you remember when times were simple and you could actually spend time with your family? At Discount Tire and Service we do, and we view our customers as family. We roll out the red carpet as you work with our knowledgeable sales assistants, doing business the way it ought to be done, the old-fashioned way. We welcome you to be a part of our family where service is the bottom line. Stop by, give us a call, or visit us online at morethantires.com.
Discount Tire and Service.
Started to work here in 44. I came over here to work because this was heavy work and I was going to play football and I wanted to be built up.
Did it work?
Well, yeah, kind of. It was called the city route. We left the plant with Maud pulling this wagon. We had about 5 or 6 300-pound blocks of ice stacked like this in the wagon. And we'd leave here with that with a tarp over it. And our first customer around the corner was the Continental bus station on the right-hand side. They had a restaurant there, and they needed ice every day. And Maud was faithful and knew the route about as good as we did. The horse.
Okay.
And she was so into it. Mr. Sheets was the route boss. All he would have to say, whoop, or whoop, you know, just some noise. And Maud would, she was not a regular horse. She was a Percheron or some Budweiser horse, you know, big feet. We made the restaurants and grocery stores on Moore Avenue. Another good customer was Chris's Cafe and the Palace Cafe, which were not very far apart. They used a lot of ice. And some of the department stores would buy a dime's worth. They had a water cooler in there, and they dropped a 12.5-pound piece of ice down.
So you got, for a dime, you got a 12.5?
Yeah.
Wow.
Before that block of ice came out of the plant and ready to be loaded, it was run through a saw that sawed it through the middle and up and down in about 4 places, I think. You could take an ice pick and go through those notches it put in there and it would just crack right open.
Wow.
One of our better customers was a Ms. Hildegard that was up on the corner of Rockwall and Nash. She ran a rooming house up there and used a lot of ice. And the Safeway store, they had a drinking fountain thing in there. We made them. And when we got over on Nash, it was mostly individual families. And they could tell you how much they wanted that day. If any, there was a square pasteboard panel. It had 25, 50, 75 on it. And whatever number was at the top, you could see it through the window. That's how much ice they wanted that day. And there was a deal where people were not going to move like they do now, and every now and then they'd call Mr. Sheets and he'd get paid for what they owed him, you know, without any. Wow. They knew they owed the money, so that it was back in the days that'll never come back, and it was fun to do. And this ice plant right here played a major role in this whole town because it's the only ice house. And when family would have kinfolks or visitors come, if it was summertime or whatever, they would send a driver to the ice house to get some ice. And they will sell you, it was about a 30-gallon container. You could get that full of crushed ice for 15 cents. And Mr. Estes, who run the place, he kept, in watermelon season, he kept watermelons in there that were ice cold. The biggest one in there would have been 35 cents, ice cold. People would drive in, they lived out a radius of 2 to 5 miles or something. They'd come in old cars that had a curved fender and the bumper was right here. And they could put a 50-pound block on most of them, just chunk it in there and head home with it. Sometimes they'd bring a tarp and quilts and whatever to cover it all up because they wanted to save all they could.
They want to melt. Wow.
But it was a people success because Mr. Estes didn't have an enemy in the world. And he also used some discipline every now and then that a teenager needed. And you never did do again what he had you in there for. Right. But it was good for me. I learned discipline in the cotton patch. It's one of them GI things. If the sergeant says you do this, you do it. You don't say, well, what do you want it over there for? You do it. There was some refrigeration in Terrell, but like the Palace Cafe, they had a monstrous ice box, and we carried a pair of ice hooks and a leather bag that was leak-proof. Because when you went in somebody's house, you wasn't going to spill water on it. Well, this Palace Cafe had ice boxes that the 50-pound blocks went up here, not wow. Down there where you could just, but up here. And it was a necessary thing.